Hi everyone, welcome to 20 Minute Tech Break. My name is Valerie Wynn and I'm the marketing specialist at Eagle Dream Technologies. So we are here every Friday at 12:30 bi-weekly, taking on a different topic each week. So this week we'll be discussing why AWS is most reliable for Windows workloads with AWS's Anthony Morgante and Eagle Dream's Justin Guse. So if you're a newcomer, this is how it's going to go today. So we have 20 minutes, 4 questions, 2 experts, and Anthony and Justin will be kind of covering 4 high-level points, and we'll open it up to Q&A. So, and for introductions, a little bit about Anthony. He is a partner sales leader at Amazon Web Services with a focus on Microsoft workloads and cloud-native technologies. So he has over 20 years of leadership in business development and enterprise sales, with a strong technical and business foundation. Most of his experience has been in larger enterprise roles, which kind of supported the evolution of his career into enterprise sales. For Justin, he is our Eagle Dream Cloud Solutions Architect and is also an AWS Partner Ambassador. So a little about Justin, he has over 10 years of experience in IT. He also has a strong background in infrastructure, networking systems, and is also professionally certified in AWS and Microsoft technologies. So we encourage you today to take on 20 minutes to learn something new and to ask questions. So Anthony and Justin, feel free to take it away.
Awesome. Thanks everybody for coming. Looks like we've got a good turnout today. I think we'll just quick run over the questions here. This is primarily focused on why you want to run your Microsoft workloads in AWS. So we'll talk a little bit about, what's AWS's experience running Windows, Microsoft workloads, some of the tools and services that are available today, and then some examples of, if you're not running in the cloud or maybe you're just starting to get into it, how you can quickly deploy solutions to get up and running and to really expand your footprint. And then lastly, we'll talk a little bit about what an assessment will bring to assess your current Microsoft workloads for potential, candidates to move to the cloud. So with that, I'll go ahead. I'll pass it over to Anthony, and he'll talk a little bit about AWS's experience with Microsoft workloads.
Thanks, Justin. Welcome, everyone. Appreciate taking the time out today on this Friday. What you'll see here on the slide, just referring to, this is the history of Microsoft workloads running in AWS. It's Microsoft workloads have always been a first-class citizen in AWS, and as you can see from the trajectory of the amount of services that we continue to add, it continues to be a first-class citizen. It's a main focus of our technology offerings. Some of these services aren't even yet offered in some of our competing cloud offerings from our peers. So AWS has been at this for a long time. They understand that most data centers that are run by enterprises have a significant Microsoft footprint. So most of these services that you see here have not only been introduced by us for the first time typically, but often they actually have been continued to evolve with us. So for example, we were the first to offer FSx, which is a file sharing system right in AWS with native SMB and Active Directory authentication, even before Azure did. So these are some of the this is some of the proof that ongoing that we continue to make investments in this space, and that's because our customers are asking for it. And some of the differentiators there, it's just the reliability is very consistent. We had 7 times less downtime in 2018 than some of our peers in this space, and people sometimes ask, how is that possible where it's such a big difference? And that's just because of our infrastructure and how it's organized and how its fault-tolerant blueprint is continued to be deployed throughout the world. So we have 76 availability zones across 24 regions, things like that differentiate us significantly from our peers. Whereas we have very stringent guidelines about what we consider an availability zone. It's multiple data centers within a specific geographic region, hundreds of miles apart on different power grids with different backups. In some other cases, our peers in this space do not consider the same stringent requirements, where two data centers can be in the same building. They're just partitioned, and that's considered two data centers. So that's just one example, but there's many more than that. Justin, you want to add anything to that before I move on?
Yeah, I mean, what I wanted to say was, I think this speaks to the breadth of services available on AWS. And I think the thing that always impresses me the most, and I think is the coolest thing, is that you can literally spin up any of these workloads anywhere in the world at any given point in time, and quickly at that. It's just amazing how AWS keeps expanding the portfolio. As soon as something new comes out, even newer versions of the Windows operating system, AWS has it ready to go. And always constantly making improvements to all the services every day, literally every day. So yeah, just wanted to add that in.
Yeah, and some of the evolution of those services, again, are driven by our customers' demands. 90% of our features and services come from customer requests, right? We have 210 security and government service features, and 116 of those are fully encrypted. That's almost 40 more than the next cloud, right? So why do we do that? That's heavy lifting, but it's what some of our customers are asking for. So where some clouds might have the same service but not the same encryption offerings, well, then that's another differentiator for us. Some of you may have seen this slide in some of my previous talks. This is the classic slide that I like to use about that kind of depicts the entire cloud transformation journey from a customer going from on-premise data center, whether it's your own or a colo, into the AWS cloud. It's usually not done in one foul swoop, right? It's usually, again, a journey, and that is the most appropriate word. And you'll see we'll end this talk with how important the assessment is. But basically, this is a good picture of that it takes many steps and many milestones, and there's different times in those milestones that you work with partners like Eagle Dream that can help you do a right-sized migration versus just a lift and shift, which is a term that I typically am not fond of because it's not a good depiction of what migration to the cloud is. You shouldn't take your footprint that's on premise and move the whole thing to the cloud, because that's not the most efficient way to do it. There's many tools that we have and many tools that Eagle Dream has developed on their own and leverage that can help you do that right-sized migration. And then when you get into the real cost savings is when you start to optimize that already right-sized footprint and then ultimately modernize, which is where you get into cloud native solutions that don't include or that don't require typical off-the-shelf licensing costs and maintenance costs and that kind of thing. And I would throw in, in the modernization phase, I would throw in managed services as well. So.
Yep, and we have plenty of customers that are at any given point during that life cycle, making their way across their cloud journey. A lot of them starting at a lift and shift to modernization. Some kind of starting in the middle off the bat. So I think it depends on the workloads that you're running today and your business. But any point in that life cycle, it's a good time to get to the cloud.
Yeah, there's good ways to get to the cloud, fast ways to get to the cloud, and then there's like the best way to get to the cloud, which is the right way for your own business. And like I was saying earlier, there's plenty of tools. You can start small, you can go large, depending on if there's some kind of compelling event like a data center exit versus just migrating one of your apps instead of migrating an entire SQL form. Just to get used to the new tools that are available, services that are available, and programs that are available that Eagle Dream would lead on our behalf. Do we want to talk a little bit about the quick start?
Yeah. I was even going to touch on some of the services too. So you brought up a good point about moving up, starting maybe with one application, and then starting to modernize from there, right? Rather than moving everything up in one shot, right?
Right.
And there's there's plenty of services that AWS offers to really help you do that, even in a kind of a piecemeal fashion. So, Anthony, she showed a slide earlier about all of the progression of services over time that AWS has had to offer. And it's like a hockey stick, right? It just continues to go straight up. And, some of those services that you can really leverage immediately from AWS includes things like Windows Server on EC2, right? Probably one of the more fundamental components of a Microsoft workload. So if you're used to maybe the Hyper-V VMware, where you're running your own servers, you can still get that sort of VM experience on AWS on EC2 and continue to own every part of the stack within the operating system. But then, there's other offerings out there that AWS has that helps customers to move quickly without having to manage all of the underlying infrastructure. So if you don't want to manage your own Active Directory environment, you can use something like AWS's managed Microsoft Active Directory or AD connector to get that flexibility, right? If a lot of workloads that are, Microsoft workloads are Active Directory integrated, it's a huge, huge component of an application perhaps. So something like that where AWS is running it for you, you don't have to manage the high availability, the patching, anything, you get Active Directory out of the box. A couple other ones would include like FSX. So Anthony mentioned that before, file sharing platform for Windows file shares on AWS. Again, you are presented a file share, the ability to add file shares, modify them, and use them immediately, and AWS handles everything underneath it from backups and patching and all of that. And plenty of new features have come out in the last couple months just around FSX and the ability to scale. So, and another couple notable ones would be things like SQL Server on RDS, platform service for databases. You just manage the database on top. Windows 10 workspaces, so VDI in the cloud. And then plenty of other support for .NET and development workloads, the .NET SDK, AWS toolkit for Visual Studio, code deploy, code build, pipelines, CI/CD. So not just infrastructure or operating system, but also all of the development tools to develop .NET applications on the cloud.
Yeah, I do want to mention one more since we're talking about .NET. It's a service that's kind of, I think we need to do a better job to promote it internally, but it's something called Elastic Beanstalk, where we can take your web app that's running on a full stack today, Windows stack today, and do a scripted migration where it moves it to AWS, and all the auto scaling and elasticity is all done for you. So when your web page or website, web app spikes in usage and load, there's an auto scaling feature that is done for you along with the redundancy and backup. So those are some of the things that, again, we at AWS can offer it at a much lesser cost and a much higher efficiency because of our scale. Where doing that on your own, you would have to dedicate infrastructure to it, right? And by dedicating infrastructure, you would need more licenses and need more manpower and have additional tools to monitor that. So again, just another example. Plenty of tools available.
Yeah. I mean, and that's the other benefit too is, getting that whole portfolio of services, not just Microsoft related, but all of the security and logging and monitoring, the CloudTrail config, guard duty, for intrusion detection, CloudWatch logging. We talked a little bit about, Anthony mentioned encryption at rest, encryption in transit, all of those things that come with AWS's cloud and the benefits of running those workloads in that full amount of insight. You're no longer just, it's no longer, I just have an operating system and I have to kind of, everything is within that box. It's now all of the services kind of surrounding it that I can use, to gain insight into my applications and what's going on in my environment at any point in time.
Let's do just a quick discussion on the modernization benefits here. So as you saw my previous slide, this talks to some of the tools and benefits that Justin was just speaking to earlier about, once you get to the cloud, then how do you leverage some of the benefits of it? And modernization is some of the best ways to do that. And while it's not free to get there, right, there's definitely initial costs. You'll see that later on when you get to a modernized state or a cloud native state, your ongoing costs to maintain this application are probably cut in half, you know, at a minimum. And then going forward, you get to use tools that give you insights and dashboards through your entire environment versus just one monolithic database or one set of tools for a specific vendor. So the benefits there are significant once you get to this level of modernization, which means things like Aurora and open source databases and containers, or even SQL and Linux, right? These are all cost-effective savings and efficient technologies. For example, Aurora puts your data in 3 different availability zones with 6 different copies, right? Maybe you might not need 6 copies, but that's how we're able to get 99.9% redundancy on your data, right? And that's all built into the fabric of Aurora. So just an example there. Let's go back to the questions here.
Yep, so I was going to say that was a really good stepping stone into, you know, well, if I do want to modernize or I do want to start to migrate to the cloud, you know, what are some ways to quickly get started? AWS has had these for a while. They're called the AWS Solutions Catalog of Implementations, which are essentially fully vetted solutions by AWS. Designed around the 5 well-architected pillars, so around operational excellence, security, reliability, cost optimization, that, you know, AWS has developed to help get a workload up and running, or at least the foundation of a workload. And there's a whole bunch of them for Microsoft workloads. So, for example, let's say you want to spin up a SQL Server always on deployment. AWS has a quick start for that. It's fully documented, full architecture diagram. It's a matter of, it's really a click button deployment. So you fill in, you know, you click a button, you fill in a few fields about the information about how you want to spin it up. And it spins it all up for you. Nothing else you need to do, you know, to create that solution. There's a whole bunch of them. So Active Directory domain services to spin a solution up on that. Amazon FSx, if you wanted to run Exchange Server, SharePoint, a CI/CD pipeline, you know, a whole bunch of different solutions with different AWS services integrated to help you do that quickly. You know, at Eagle Dream, we use those frequently. We point customers in that direction. The documentation is awesome. It's super detailed. Again, easy to deploy, click button solutions. You know, and you have that trust of knowing that it's vetted by solution architects, and they are the ones who created these solutions.
Yeah, and from what I understand, most of, if not all, probably quick starts were born from, you know, the heavy usage of internal AWS ops and DevOps, right? It's the same type of scripts and deployment tools that are used internally to deploy, you know, millions of servers that we manage, right? So you can be rest assured that it's been hardened and, you know, revised to the nth degree to achieve, you know, the perfect end result of whatever the quick start is focusing on. So it's not one of those things that was built just in a lab.
Yeah, and I think you mentioned that you know, how important customer feedback is in the feedback loop. A lot of those solutions are ever evolving too. I know some of them, when I go back, I'll look at it, you know, maybe the first iteration of it, and I'll go back maybe a month or two later, and I look and there's been a few revisions to it, or improvements or updates based upon the new services that become available. So it's always having that peace of mind that AWS knows that they're releasing services quickly and constantly making improvements, and their solutions, the quick start solutions, are always up to date to be able to deploy the latest and the greatest. So I think it's a really great place to start.
Yeah, agreed. Let's just touch lastly before we open it up to, I guess, to some questions regarding how important the assessment is. Again, that first slide I showed you with the arrow that starts the journey, we love to start with an assessment because it gives us not only a current picture of your environment, but kind of helps define what that footprint is, or footprints, right? A lot of times it spans multiple data centers. But more importantly, this is your data, right? This is new information or current information that gives you a detailed picture of how your environment's running, where it's running, and utilization of that environment, which is super important for us to work with Eagle Dream to come back to you and offer, hey, these are the options you have for running, ABC workload in AWS. So if your utilization of your footprint is low, from a load perspective, in the 50 or 60%, which is typically what we see. We actually see utilizations being below 50%, which means that most customers, not all, but most customers are over provisioned for hardware and over provisioned for licensing, right? So that's why right sizing a migration first is important. So this gives us in Eagle Dream the ability to put together not necessarily an exact blueprint of how to move forward, but at least bring the customer to the buffet table, so to speak, to be able to pick and choose what are the right offerings, services, features, capabilities that are right for their business or for a specific workload. For example, if you have a SQL farm of 1,000 servers, it doesn't necessarily mean you have to treat all 1,000 database servers in the same way. You might have some applications that lend itself better to an RDS, SQL and RDS type managed service where there's not that many calls and there's not too many custom code, there's not too many stored procedures, and that would lend itself to a very efficient RDS application, right? Whereas a more complicated database that has different requirements or does have a lot of custom code probably wouldn't be the right fit. So there'd be another type of database application there. Justin, you want to elaborate a bit on that?
Yeah, no, I mean, you hit it right on the head. It totally depends on the type of a workload or application that's running to really determine, which platform is the best for it. But, all of that is part of the process and learning, analyzing, what a customer has today and the best move forward. And that's where Eagle Dream really comes in to help out customers.
Yeah, and believe it or not, most of the customers sometimes give us a little pushback here, even though this is, a program that is sponsored by AWS. But initially we get pushback that says, hey, we already have all this information in a spreadsheet somewhere by someone, right? And then, of course we take that in and we find out that the spreadsheet is, 18 months old or, 2 merger and acquisitions ago, and it's not really up to date. Plus it doesn't give us the current utilization, right? Which is really important, and the licensing that goes along with that. So again, if you're a typical long-time Microsoft or Oracle or fill in the blank license owner, you have to be licensed for your peak load. So whether you use that whole infrastructure all year long or 1 month long out of those 12 months, you still pay for it for the whole time, right? That's the beauty and the power of the cloud, where you get to leverage the elasticity of the cloud and you just pay for what you get and what you use. And that includes licensing. Right? If you only use certain features and services for 1 out of the 12 months, then you'll only pay for that license and service for 1 out of the 12 months versus getting locked in for 36 months, right? That's a major benefit of the cloud.
And AWS manages it for you, so there's nothing you have to worry about in terms of audits and all that, because AWS is doing the heavy license lifting for you.
Exactly.
All right, well, Anthony and Justin, thank you so much for your informative discussion. So I'm sure a lot of people have questions. So we're now opening it up to Q&A. Raise your hand and we can call on you and unmute you if you just want to verbally ask the question, or you can feel free to type your question in the chat box. And I noticed that we do already have a question. One is from Courtney. So any recommendations for approaching this conversation with stakeholders in the organization? How do we get them on board?
How do you get stakeholders in your organization on board? Is that the question?
Correct.
So that's a great question, because most of the cloud strategies that are successful start from the top down, right? The leadership of the company has to be all in on making the cloud journey. It doesn't necessarily mean that they have to go all in with the cloud, but they do have to be all in with whatever portion they want to move to the cloud. So getting the most senior people that are decision makers involved from the beginning and showing them the output from these assessments, the benefits that they can recognize right from the onset is critical. A lot of times that doesn't happen because services, from Google, from Azure, and from AWS are available by anyone, and there's a lot of free portions to it. Cloud work, so to speak, often comes into a company by just starting some projects in a lab because it's easy to do, right? And then sometimes that grows beyond the lab, and then then leadership gets involved. It really should be the other way around, honestly. When you have senior leadership buy-in, things just happen quicker, better, more informed. Budgets get approved, strategies get built, things like assessments get approved, and then InfoSec is involved. And when they're involved from the beginning, again, the built-in security requirements are done from the beginning, and they would be working with the team at Eagle Dream as well. So hope that answers the question. Justin, feel free to add anything.
Yeah, no, you hit it right on. And, another tool to help in that process is AWS's Cloud Adoption Framework, which is kind of the roadmap for migrating to the cloud. Essentially a gap analysis, kind of filling in the blanks, filling in any gaps, getting everybody on board. And it's a really, really great tool, totally free, to kind of help fill in the blanks across all portions of the company, from, business and analyst teams to leadership, to ensure that, everybody is on board for getting to the cloud. So definitely worth checking out.
Perfect. So we have enough time for just one more question. We have one from Amy. What are some misconceptions in the industry about running Microsoft on AWS?
You want to take that, Justin, or you want me to?
I'll take a stab at it. And maybe we have the same thoughts, or maybe we have different thoughts. But I think one misconception generally about the cloud, and I think it applies to Microsoft workloads too, is, the cloud's not secure, right? I'm not going to just put my stuff up, but I don't know where it's running, and everybody can access it. It's actually quite the opposite of that. AWS has designed the services to not only empower businesses to operate safely, but to get insight into what's going on in their environment at any point in time. And on top of that, AWS is always standing by and protecting a lot of the things that we can't see and monitoring as well. So plenty of ways to secure your workloads, plenty of tools available to gain, actually, I would say, more insight into the security of your workloads than if you were to be running it in your own data centers. Anything from, machine learning, detective analysis, alerting. So I would say that's probably one of the biggest ones. Anthony, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree 100% there. Everything you said, spot on. Part of it is just perception. Along with it being a misconception, it's just a perception where, Microsoft workloads may run better in Azure because they developed the tools, right? But the reality is we run more Microsoft workloads than folks do in Azure, right? And many more than in Google. So we have a history of that. We were first to, develop all those offerings, and we continue to develop and treat Microsoft workloads as a first-class citizen.
Great. Well, we are just up on about time. So thank you so much, Anthony and Justin, for joining us. Thank you for everybody that asked their questions and for attending this week's Tech Break. Next Tech Break will be August 24th. Be with Transcat's Andy Quaranto and Heather Heel, along with Eagle Dream's Brianna Putacchio on data lakes. So be on the lookout for that meeting notice, and everybody have a great weekend. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Everyone, thanks for joining.